And welcome back to this edition of Central Valley Business. I'm your host, Lauren Baker, filling in for Mike Scott. And we are back with the fabulous Susan Lowe, who's here to tell us all about this beautiful book she wrote called Josie. So welcome, Susan.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. We're happy to have all of our beautiful authors and artists today. I had a good streak of not stuttering, and I just killed it a little bit. But that's okay. That's okay. So tell us all about your book.
Well, Josie is a true story. It's my mother's immigration story. Post-World War II, Yugoslavia was hit pretty hard. First they had the occupation of the Nazis, and as they left, the Russians came through and raped and stole from those living in Yugoslavia. And immediately after that, Tito and his partisans came in, and they threw anyone of German ethnicity into concentration camps. Josie was 4 years old when she was taken to her first concentration camp, and it is her story of faith and survival as she and her family made it eventually to America.
It's fascinating. Like, I hate to say it like this phrase, I love those kinds of stories, because I don't mean it in a very sadistic sense or anything like that, but like that time period is very fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I love stories like that in that sense. Mm-hmm. How long does the story go? Like, what's the time span?
Well, she went into the first camp in 1944, and she was separated from her family other than an older brother. Her older brother went to the first camp, Fransfeld, with her. They were there for some time, and he had heard there was a death wagon that came through the area to pile bodies, and he had heard from the death camp driver that his family was still in their original town. And so he helped Josie escape. The two of them crawled under a fence, got past the guards, actually made it back to the hometown. But when they were discovered, at some point they were separated, and Josie was sent to Rudolfsnacht, which is a death camp, by herself. And at that point she was probably around 6. When she made it to America, she was 9. So from 4 to age 9.
Wow, that's
There's
a
lot
long
of
time.
trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, do you have plans to maybe write more stories about this character in this time period?
You know, I've had several people who have read the book ask if there'll be a sequel. And at this time, I don't have any plans to write a sequel, although I'm not totally giving up on that idea.
Yeah.
But I will be writing other books, and I'm playing with some new ideas. Maybe not quite so heavy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, it could be fascinating to find out what eventually happens to her, type of thing, because I know that's based on a family member. So obviously she survives and goes on, but it would be interesting, I think, to see what she eventually does and how she uses her experiences, for sure. Mm-hmm. What other types of stories can you see yourself writing?
I see myself writing about, possibly children's books. Things that mean something. One of the things that was really important to me about writing Josie is that it's a story you don't read about in history books. Mm-hmm. And my family had a lot of pain around it. Overnight they lost the ability to be citizens in Yugoslavia, even though they had lived there for 7 generations previously. Tito made it impossible for Germans to be, because they assumed all Germans had to be Nazis, and they made it impossible for them to own property or to have any rights. And so he put out the word that anything that you do to a German person will not be against the law. Mm-hmm. And so they suffered in horrible cruelty as a result of that. When I decided to write this story, I went and visited with other survivors of the time, because I wanted to compare my mom's stories with others to make sure that we were putting out a historically accurate story. And in doing so, I found that the pain for most of them, they had had this horrendous experience, but the ongoing pain was that the world didn't acknowledge it, and they saw it as the forgotten genocide.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. Where can people get this book if they're interested in reading about it?
Well, it's available on Amazon. It's also at Majesty Bibles, Books, and Gifts. And you can go to any bookstore and ask them to order it if they're not currently carrying it.
Well, that's kind of cool. Like, hey, you don't got this, but I want it anyways. Will you get this for me?
Yeah.
Type of a thing. That's kind of cool. But I'm glad that it's easily accessible. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it almost anywhere. That's really cool. And what would you say what makes you proudest about this particular book that you've done? Like, what's your proudest moment in doing it?
I think in telling the forgotten story, I know that many of the people that were survivors of this horrific event in history are getting up in age and are starting to die off. And it was really important to me that it be out there before we lost that entire generation, so that they could feel that somebody was acknowledging it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had wonderful feedback from people who have read it. Not just is it a good read, but it's a powerful read in that it talks about something that most of us have not heard about.
Yeah, absolutely. And these things, and that's a very good point too, because it's more palpable and more like important to get these kinds of accounts from the people who lived it, because there's going to come a time where you can't, and there's always going to be someone like, I wish I could ask the people that were actually there, because people already say that about like already like old stories and from history. Like, people always want to know what the actual people felt, and we still have that opportunity, which is very lucky that we do. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That makes it all the more intriguing, I think, in reading books like these, because they really are real-time accounts from the people that were there. So that's fascinating stuff.
And I have always loved writing, and so the other thing was actually producing something that came from me. As a little girl, when I played with dolls, I would set them all up, but rarely get around to actually playing with them, because I'd be busy writing the town newspaper of the things that might be happening in their pretend world.
That's so cool.
So it was nice to actually take some of those talents and things that I've nurtured through the years and do something with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, Susan. It's been a real treat talking to you and sharing this wonderful story and a piece of your legacy with us.
Thank you.
Of course. We hope you'll be back to promote more things you do in the future, and to maybe share more things that you do with us as you go on your newfound author career.
I'd love to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today on Central Valley Business. We hope you've enjoyed meeting all these wonderful lady authors with us today as much as I have. It's always inspiring to see what Fresno women do. So tune in with us tomorrow, the same time, same place, right here at Central Valley Talk for more Central Valley Business.